You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I am so excited to talk to today's guest. When I first saw the name of her book, I was like, we've got to get this person on Releasing Trauma. Her name is Pam Gaslow, and the name of her book is Don't Bring Your Vibrator to Rehab. Her story, of course, is not as funny, I'm sure, as the title to the book, but just that open rawness of having a book title like that. I was like, yes, I've got to get her on to come talk to us and tell us her story about, sobriety and then relapse. So Pam, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am thrilled to have you. So let's just, I guess, dive into, talking about your story. You were, excuse me, you had experienced almost a decade of sobriety and then relapsed. Is that correct?
That is correct. I actually, at the time where I relapsed, I hadn't had a drink in around 20 years, and I was sober from marijuana for about 8 years or 8.5, something like that. Yes.
Can I ask, what triggered the relapse?
It's always just something not so interesting or great. And basically I was just hanging out with a guy and in kind of like a sexual situation. And I was just, he brought out some weed and I got high with him.
Gotcha.
It's always something simple.
And that's all it took, is just that one time. I've never been addicted to alcohol or drugs or anything, but I have a food addiction. So in a way I can kind of understand it. It's just that you can go so long and do so well. And if you succumb just once, that's all it takes to trigger that spiral back down.
Yeah. And a lot of people like in AA say it's usually people drink over the broken shoelace type of metaphor. And it's not like something major dramatic. Nobody died or I didn't lose a job. And it
right.
was that's what's so insidious about it.
So ultimately you became sick from marijuana toxicity. Tell us a little bit about what was going on there and what that felt like. And
excuse me. I was smoking out of a bong for a long time. And then I had really bad allergies and I went to an allergist and he's like, your lung capacity is at 65%. And, that was alarming, but, it was alarming. So I switched to the weed pens, like the oil pens, and I was smoking so much of those. And I eventually started vomiting regularly. And, I spoke to 2 doctors and they're like, yeah, that's toxicity. And, something called like cyclical vomiting syndrome or something. And it was 100% from those.
I've never heard of marijuana toxicity. Everybody that I've talked to who smokes pot, they all tell me, it's a plant and, there's never any bad effects unless you get a bad batch that's laced with something or, so, to find out that, it can cause problems like that, to me is just very interesting, kind of eye-opening for sure.
I've actually read about it and it is a thing. And well, I can only speak for myself, but yes, most people don't smoke as much as I did. So I think when you take it to the next level and you are just sucking on a pen, like it's, a medical, like something that's going to save your life. Like I was just so like, I might as well have had it attached to my lips. Like when you're smoking to that point where it's like 24/7, yes, that's different. And I'm going to venture to say most people don't smoke like I do, or I did.
Now, I've never also heard, that marijuana is addictive. everybody I've talked to again has, marijuana is not addictive. It's not a gateway drug and all of that. But, you actually found the opposite. Marijuana is addictive.
For me, yes. I think that, I just want to, keep emphasizing that this is for me. And I know marijuana has a lot of positive benefits for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I would never, negate that. I'm just speaking from my experience as an addict, when that's the only thing I was doing. Yes, I was psychologically addicted. I was probably physically addicted because when I stopped, I kind of was sick.
Yeah.
I had really bad stomach problems. I couldn't eat. And, I didn't go through DTs or anything like that, but I wasn't well, and I wasn't well mentally. And that also is, critical.
Right.
I lived in a fog for 2 years. I couldn't read. I couldn't think. I didn't have a clear thought. I wasn't present. And I also couldn't feel anything. What was really upsetting to me, I realized, was like, I couldn't so much feel my feelings, but I also couldn't feel bad, but I couldn't feel good, because a couple of good things happened to me when I was getting high that should have made me really happy. And I couldn't feel that either. And that made me really sad. But that was also, another wake-up call.
So between that and the toxicity, that led you back into rehab?
Yeah. Once I started throwing up, I knew that was the end. And I knew this wasn't going to get better.
Right.
And start physically affecting me was like another level that I've had enough.
Well, good on you for realizing that and for taking those steps to get clean again and get better and get your health back. I can only imagine how difficult it is, never having gone through it, but having watched people go through, alcoholism and drug addiction. So, definitely I have to give you kudos for that.
Oh, thanks.
So, let's talk a little bit about your book. First of all, what inspired the title? Because I absolutely love the title of your book.
Thank you. When I was, quote unquote, researching rehabs, which I might add I did while I was high, I would have them send me information, and every rehab has a list of things you can and cannot bring. And I found them really, really funny. I mean, some of the things they listed were like laser pens, glass objects, teddy bears. And at first I was going to call the book "Don't Bring Your Teddy Bear to Rehab." But then I read one sheet, I don't remember exactly which place it was from, and it said, you were not allowed to bring any sexual objects. So it went from "Don't Bring Your Teddy Bear to Rehab" to "Don't Bring Your Vibrator to Rehab," because I just thought it was just, a humorous, dark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it just kind of suits my personality and makes a little bit fun of the whole process.
Yeah. So tell us, what is the book about?
The book is about my journey from basically, I moved to Miami in 2015, and I kind of just spiraled downward. And, I quickly after moving here, I met a guy, and like I explained earlier, I wound up getting high with him, and how quickly I spiraled downward into basically a world of not much, on where that led me physically and psychologically, which was just a very low, dark, lonely place. And, getting to the point of 2 years later of, like I said, being physically sick, emotionally depleted, and I was really just super depressed and super hopeless, and really started to think about maybe I don't want to live anymore. And I certainly didn't want to live like that. So then then the book goes on to talk about how I research rehabs, how I, finally sign up, and I describe a lot of different actual rehab centers across the country and what they offer. And then finally getting the courage to actually go to one. And then the story about, kind of daily life in rehab, and which could be interesting, sad, tragic, and funny.
I can imagine probably it could be all of those within just the span of a couple of hours too, I would bet.
For sure.
On some days.
Like the best reality, the best and worst reality TV show.
Right. So, what are some of the things, for our listeners out there who maybe are needing to look into rehab or know somebody who needs to look into rehab? What are some of the things that they should be looking for as far as a good fit? Because not every rehab, is going to be a good fit for somebody.
Right.
So how do they find the right one?
I think that you can first off, first a good way is to just asking anyone if they know, or if they know anyone who's been. I've been in recovery a long time, and it is difficult because there's so many treatment centers now, and a lot of them are very expensive and over the top and glamorous. And I write about that, how the rehab to the stars, I read up on a lot of those places like Promises in Malibu and, a couple others that, charge a lot of money, but it's not really scientifically proven that they're any better than any others. I think you need to look for, if you have a specific addiction, if you really want to address that. And I would, then, kind of research whatever your specific thing is and call and ask a lot of questions and ask about the programs and ask how long they are and what they focus on, and figure out where you actually want to be, physically. Do you want to be in the middle of nowhere? Do you want to be, in a beautiful place? Do you just, I picked just kind of a middle of the road, price wise, rehab. And I picked one that was close to me. I live in Florida, so I did not want to get on a plane. And, if someone had recommended it to me, and I called, and they were very nice, and the intake was professional, and it just sounded like a good fit for me. So I would just say, do some homework, ask questions, and take it from there.
So, one of the things that I do know about rehab, I looked into this for a family member years ago, and what we went through was the price. I mean, like you said, some of these are super expensive. And insurance doesn't necessarily cover it or cover all of it.
My insurance, actually, this is interesting and a good little bit of education for anyone who's actually considering going to rehab. When I called my insurance company and told them that I was addicted to weed, they were like, basically they said they would send me to outpatient rehab. And if I failed at that twice, they would then consider inpatient. So they don't think that, I guess, this was a few years ago now. I don't know if it's changed, but they didn't really consider that a problem, or at least a problem being inpatient. So, I mean, in hindsight, I could have said, I was an alcoholic, which I am, but that wasn't my issue at the time. But, so, but it does usually, if you have decent insurance, it usually will cover some of it at least.
Yeah. What have you found, or what do you know from your experience for those out there who are listening who want the help and need the help, but they can't afford it? They they're low income, or they're destitute. They don't have insurance.
Certain treatment centers. Yeah, certain treatment centers do have, I don't want to call it a scholarship, but, something like that. So I would ask those questions, because I know that they do. And everyone at the treatment center I was at was there, via different circumstances. And some people didn't have money and some people did.
Yeah.
So I would definitely, inquire about that. But, I would suggest going to AA meetings, and whatever your drug is, it doesn't matter. I always say just, replace the name, whether it's Coke, weed, alcohol, just cross out the name and put in your drug of choice. It's really all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone just wants to get better. It doesn't really matter what your specific substance is, but I would go to AA meetings, and that's originally how I got sober, just by doing that. And they're free, and, they're everywhere.
Okay. That's good to know. I want to talk a little bit about, mental health, because, most people don't just become addicted to something just for the heck of it. A lot of times, or most of the time, there's usually some kind of underlying trigger. So, along with the sobriety, what have you done to, kind of help heal the wounds that you've dealt with over the past, or in the past?
I think that's not, there's no like easy answer to that question. I think, it's a combination of so many things. And, I'll talk about some, like I said, meetings, developing a network of friends who are also sober. That's like very, very important. And, this is a very cliche thing that they say in the program, but it's people, places, and things, and staying away from those things that you think can trigger you and that are negative to you. Therapy, helps a lot of people. I've been in and out of therapy for many years. It's personally not my thing, but if that helps you, that's amazing. And I've also just tried to live healthy. I don't go to environments where I'm uncomfortable. I don't hang out in bars. I don't, that's any kind of place that just makes me uncomfortable. And also simple things that everyone talks about every single day that I ignored for most of my life, like exercising.
Mm-hmm.
If I can count on how many people told me to do stuff like that when I was younger, and I ignored all of those suggestions. And now that's such a big part of my life. And it's a healthy outlet, talking to people, anything you can read, anything positive, spiritual, mind opening, it's so many things, but it's just basically focusing on anything that's, geared towards a healthier lifestyle, and even just doing something like a hobby that you enjoy that makes you feel good.
Those are all really, really good ideas. And did you find that writing your book helped as well?
So much, because I do love to write, and to get that all out and to get it out of me and to actually, convey a message. And then when I read it back, I'm even like, wow. I mean, like, I'm like, wow, you were really sad. And so it even helps, if it can help anybody, one person, and they identify, it doesn't have to be exact. No one has the same exact story, but identify with the feelings, then that's really what recovery is about. And so it was super helpful for me to write about it.
Yeah. I know that I have found, and I've talked to so many people who say that writing, even if it's just journaling, is so healing, because you're getting out the emotions, the pain, the hurt, the anger. You're getting all of that out instead of letting it stay in and just kind of fester and grow.
Yeah. And that you can do that also just talking to a friend or a therapist or somebody else who's, in the same mindset and going through a similar, anyone who can identify with you. It's like they say, a fear shared is a fear halved. Just communicating, even if you think it's silly or embarrassing, it's like there's someone else who felt that way at some point. We're all human. We all have the same feelings. So I think it's really important not to keep it all inside.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely agree. No matter what the trauma or the situation is. Definitely. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Well, Pam, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today, and, sharing a little bit about your experiences and all of that, and giving us some tips on what to look for, how to go out there and find the help that we need. And I just, I really appreciate your bravery and courage to come forward and talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Listeners, make sure you grab a copy of her book, Don't Bring Your Vibrator to Rehab. If you want to get in touch with Pam, you can just go to her website, pamgaslow.com. I will have everything in the show notes as always. Just head over to releasingtraumapodcast.com and pull up Pam's show and all of her contact information, the link to the book. Everything will be there, all nice and neat for you. Thank you, as always, for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.